In the vast, sprawling universe, Earth had always been a pale blue dot in the grand scheme of things. Yet, it was from this small, seemingly insignificant planet that the seeds of galactic revolution would be sown. The year was 2357, and humanity had long since mastered the art of space travel, having spread to neighboring star systems. But now, for the first time in history, a grand vision for the future was unfolding, a future where humans wouldn't just be explorers or settlers, they would become the architects of the galaxy itself. The Universal Assembly, a conglomerate of species from across the known universe, had long controlled the flow of interstellar politics. It was an age-old system, dominated by an ancient alliance of advanced civilizations, the Zoroth, a hyper-intelligent insectoid species, the Varaxians, a race of aquatic beings who ruled over vast underwater planets, and the Tylorians, a bioengineered race of mechanical beings who valued logic and efficiency above all. Each species had contributed to a unified front of peace, but the peace was not always the most progressive. There were growing rifts in the assembly, with many species vying for control of the future. Amidst this uncertain era, Earth's representatives, led by Admiral Alicia Reeker, proposed a bold new vision for the future. Instead of relying on the traditional leadership of the assembly, she called for a new system, one where humans would lead a coalition of species to guide the galaxy toward prosperity. It was a daring proposal, and one that immediately sparked both intrigue and outrage across the stars. Alicia Reeker wasn't just a politician. She was a war hero, known across the galaxy for her pivotal role in the defense of Earth during the Skrax invasion, an event that had nearly wiped out human civilization. The experience had shaped her view of the universe and the role humans were destined to play within it. Her vision was simple: Earth had faced extinction and risen from the ashes. Humanity had learned the hard way the value of unity, perseverance, and ingenuity, qualities that, she believed, could bring a new era to the galaxy. The proposal was met with fierce resistance. The Zoroth, proud of their long-standing rule over galactic affairs, questioned whether humanity had the necessary wisdom to lead. The Varaxians were wary of Earth's aggressive military expansion, while the Tylorians felt threatened by the idea that a biological species could outpace their technological supremacy. The debate in the Universal Assembly Hall was intense. Representatives from each species gathered, their voices echoing through the grand chamber. Some argued that the galaxy had grown stagnant, that the time for new leadership had arrived. Others feared what a human-led coalition could mean for their own power structures. But Alicia remained calm, her eyes locked on the vast chamber before her. "We have learned from our mistakes," she declared, her voice unwavering. "We have fallen, and we have risen. We are not the same species that once tore itself apart with war and strife. We are the future, if you allow us to be." Her words struck a chord with many of the younger species in the assembly, who were tired of the old guard's complacency. There was a spark of hope, a realization that perhaps humanity could offer something different, something the galaxy desperately needed. But there was also an undercurrent of fear. The galaxy had never seen a species like humanity before. They were unpredictable, passionate, and capable of immense creativity, but also capable of destruction. The debates continued for weeks, but slowly, the tides began to shift. Some of the more moderate species began to see the merit in Alicia's vision. The Tylorians, cold and calculating, were the first to step forward and endorse her plan, though it was with reservations. The Varaxians followed suit, hoping that Earth's leadership could bring about new technological advancements that would benefit their aquatic worlds. The Zoroth, though reluctant, agreed to the proposal, though their representatives made it clear that humanity's influence would need to be carefully monitored. With the endorsement of the Assembly secured, humanity's new role as a galactic leader was set into motion. It was a victory, but the battle had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, and many species would resist the changes Alicia sought to bring. In the coming years, humanity would have to prove itself not just as a leader, but as a force for peace, progress, and unity across the stars. As the first human ambassadors stepped onto the decks of the Assembly's flagship, the Elysian Star, the weight of their task was clear. They weren't just representing Earth, they were representing the future of the entire galaxy. And as they looked out into the boundless expanse of space, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. For they knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's true legacy, a legacy that would shape the future of the universe for generations to come. The first few years of humanity's leadership were a whirlwind of diplomacy, alliances, and challenges. The galaxy's largest and most powerful factions watched with bated breath, waiting for humanity to stumble. The Unified Coalition, as it was now called, was fragile, its foundation built on the ambition and resolve of Earth's representatives. Despite the growing pains, humanity's leadership began to show promise. The Coalition's charter, drafted by Admiral Alicia Reeker herself, was built on the principles of mutual cooperation, technological exchange, and an unwavering commitment to peace. Yet, the cracks were already beginning to form. Humanity's rapid progress and thirst for innovation sparked both admiration and envy. The Zorith, who had long been the intellectual giants of the galaxy, found themselves increasingly challenged by human ingenuity. Where once they were the keepers of knowledge, the humans had unlocked new frontiers of science, particularly in the fields of AI and quantum propulsion. The Varaxians, for all their wisdom in oceanic exploration, were beginning to feel the weight of Earth's advancements on their once secure position as the foremost caretakers of deep space resources. The Tylorians, with their cold, mechanical demeanor, had initially supported humanity's rise, but their skepticism was growing. They had always placed their trust in logic and efficiency, but humanity's passion and unpredictability seemed to fly in the face of these ideals. The Tylorians had always prided themselves on maintaining a balance of power with an iron grip, and now they feared that their dominance might slip away. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy found itself in a delicate dance of shifting alliances and rising tensions. Alicia Reeker, with her brilliant strategic mind, understood that the unity of the coalition would be fragile, dependent not just on diplomacy, but on proving that humanity's rule could benefit all. The challenge, however, was immense. Discontent was rising, and whispers of rebellion started to echo through the darker corridors of galactic space. It was the Zorith who first tested humanity's resolve. Under the guise of a trade dispute, the insectoid species attempted to leverage their power over the coalition by sabotaging key resource shipments to Earth's allies. It was a subtle move, designed to create distrust and sow discord within the newly formed alliance. The Zorith expected humanity to hesitate, to falter in its response. But they underestimated the resolve of Earth's leadership. Instead of engaging in the bureaucratic wrangling typical of the Assembly, Alicia dispatched a special envoy to the Zorith homeworld, carrying a clear message: humanity would not be swayed. The Zoritha's actions would not go unpunished. The envoy's arrival on Zoritha's home planet, a vast network of hive cities beneath an alien sky, was tense. The Zorith Queen herself met with the human emissaries, her towering form casting a long shadow over the delegates. The air was thick with the weight of centuries-old animosities between the two species. But instead of engaging in a battle of words, Admiral Reeker's representative delivered a simple ultimatum: cease the sabotage, or humanity would take direct military action. The Zorith, not expecting such a swift and decisive threat, hesitated. Their centuries-old pride had been shaken by the audacity of a species they once considered beneath them. Yet, after days of tense negotiations, the Zorith retreated, agreeing to a ceasefire and a formal apology. It was a victory for humanity, and one that sent a clear message across the galaxy: under Alicia Reeker's leadership, Earth would not be intimidated. But as the dust settled, the victory was bittersweet. Humanity's rise was not without cost. The Zoritha's grudging compliance came at a price: increased tensions across the galaxy. Other factions, previously content to let the status quo reign, were now questioning whether humanity's rapid rise was truly in their best interests. It was the Varaxians who next tested the limits of the new coalition. They had grown increasingly frustrated with humanity's rapid technological advances, fearing that Earth might soon surpass their own aquatic engineering capabilities. An offer from the Varaxians to enter into a joint research project was made, but there was an undercurrent of distrust. The Varaxians sought to gain access to Earth's new propulsion technologies, while secretly hoping to uncover any vulnerabilities they could exploit in the human systems. Admiral Reeker, ever vigilant, saw through the veiled offer. Instead of directly confronting the Varaxians, she chose a different tactic, a public demonstration of Earth's technological prowess. The Elysian Star, the flagship of the Coalition, was dispatched on a high-profile mission to explore a newly discovered star system. Along the way, the crew showcased the cutting-edge quantum jump technology that had been developed on Earth. The display of power was undeniable, Earth's technology was superior, and humanity was not afraid to flaunt it. The Varaxians, unable to hide their jealousy, quickly backed down, understanding that pushing against humanity's influence could have disastrous consequences. But this victory came with its own set of challenges. The coalition was held together by the fragile threads of diplomacy, but as the forces of power and politics began to shift, the once solid foundations of the alliance started to quiver. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see if humanity could rise to meet its destiny, or if it would crumble beneath the weight of its own ambition. In the silence that followed these confrontations, one thing was clear: humanity had proven itself capable of shaping the future of the universe. But now, it had to fight to ensure that future was one of unity, rather than division. The tides of galactic power were shifting, and Earth's legacy was still very much in the balance. The delicate balance of the unified coalition was rapidly being tested. With each victory and setback, the galactic community grew more divided, and the cracks in the alliance widened. While humanity had proven its resilience and cunning on the galactic stage, not all species saw their rise to power as a positive development. Earth's leadership, once hailed as the hope for a new galactic order, now faced a darker side of progress: opposition from within. On the fringes of coalition space, a series of unprovoked attacks on human colonies and neutral worlds began. The perpetrators were a coalition of disgruntled factions, including a rogue faction of the Zoroth, a faction of Varasian rebels, and a new movement of disillusioned Tylorians who had grown increasingly resentful of humanity's growing influence. They called themselves the New Dawn, a loose confederation of species who sought to resist what they saw as humanity's imperialistic ambitions. The attacks were carefully orchestrated, starting with hit-and-run raids on human outposts, followed by sabotage of critical trade routes and resource depots. Their aim was clear: to destabilize humanity's hold on the galaxy and send a message that the coalition was not as unified as Earth's leadership believed. The first strike hit a remote human colony in the Orion system. A fleet of stolen Zoroth warships, modified for stealth, ambushed the settlement. The colonists, unprepared for such a sudden attack, suffered heavy losses. The Zoroth had been part of the coalition, but this breakaway faction believed that humanity had overstepped its bounds. They viewed Earth's leadership as a threat to their sovereignty, and they were willing to shed blood to defend their place in the galaxy. Admiral Alicia Reeker, still in command of the coalition's forces, responded quickly, dispatching a fleet to engage the Zoroth rebels. It was a brutal conflict, with both sides taking heavy casualties. But the Zoroth were not the only threat on the horizon. News quickly spread that the Varasian rebels had launched a series of attacks on vital human-controlled mining colonies in deep space territories. These operations were far more calculated, with Varasian intelligence providing key insights into human defenses. The attacks crippled Earth's resource supply chain, cutting off essential materials needed for technological advancements and military production. In the midst of these military engagements, tensions within the heart of the coalition began to rise. Earth's allies, those species who had stood by humanity in the beginning, began to question whether the cost of peace and progress was too high. The Tylorians, who had initially supported Earth's rise, were now starting to look inward. Their once pragmatic society, based on logic and efficiency, was beginning to fracture under the weight of their uncertainty. Had humanity truly come to bring peace, or had they merely come to dominate? On the Tylorian homeworld, the capital city of Lumnos was abuzz with dissent. A faction within the Tylorian leadership, led by the coldly calculating Minister Enner, began to publicly question the legitimacy of humanity's rule. They argued that the galaxy's future would be best served by restoring the old power structure, one where the Tylorians had maintained control, not humans. While their campaign was subtle, it gained traction as more Tylorians grew disillusioned by humanity's actions. Despite these internal fractures, Admiral Reeker and her core supporters remained resolute. She understood that this moment of galactic instability was a crossroads for the future of the unified coalition. To remain in power, humanity had to prove its value not just through military might, but through diplomacy and compassion. The New Dawn's attacks were not just acts of rebellion, they were carefully timed provocations designed to erode the faith that many species had placed in humanity. The Zorith had believed that Earth's technological superiority would be their undoing, while the Varaxians feared their own technological stagnation would be exposed by the humans' innovations. The Tylorians, with their cold, methodical nature, began to see humanity's emotional unpredictability as a dangerous wild card, a force that could not be easily controlled. As the first waves of the New Dawn's insurgency grew bolder, the coalition was forced into a critical decision, to either hold firm and crush the rebellion with force, or to seek a more subtle approach and try to win over the hearts and minds of the dissident factions. Alicia, known for her pragmatism and understanding of the galaxy's complex dynamics, chose a path that would both preserve Earth's leadership and create an opening for reconciliation. The decision was made to invite the New Dawn's leaders, if they could be found, to the negotiation table. Despite the immense risk, it was a calculated gamble. If Earth's representatives could extend a hand to their enemies and prove that humanity's leadership could be just and equitable, perhaps the fractures in the coalition could be healed before they turned into full-scale war. But as Alicia prepared for the delicate peace talks, there was an undeniable truth weighing heavily on her: the galaxy's future was now in the hands of humanity. Earth's legacy would either be one of unity, or it would crumble beneath the weight of its own ambition. The coming days would reveal whether the seeds of rebellion could be rooted out or whether they would grow into something far more dangerous, something that could tear the galaxy apart. The invitation extended by Admiral Alicia Reeker to the leaders of the New Dawn had been a gamble, one that was fraught with uncertainty. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of full-scale war, and the negotiations could either bring a fragile peace or ignite an even fiercer conflict. As Earth's diplomats prepared for the talks, tensions ran high across the coalition. Rumors spread that the New Dawn leaders had begun to unify under a single banner, and their attacks had escalated in both scale and sophistication. No longer were they isolated groups of disgruntled rebels, they were rapidly becoming a formidable force that could challenge the very foundations of the coalition. The location for the negotiations was chosen carefully, an uninhabited moon in the Nebula Rift, a place far removed from any faction's stronghold. It was neutral ground, devoid of the pressure that would come from hosting the talks on any one faction's home turf. A grand summit was planned, bringing together representatives of the New Dawn and the leadership of the coalition. It would be humanity's chance to prove that their path was one of peace, not conquest. But as the day of the summit drew nearer, cracks began to show in the carefully orchestrated peace process. The Zorith rebels, initially wary of negotiations, had grown bolder. Their forces had begun to infiltrate key regions of coalition space, causing widespread panic. The Varasian factions, emboldened by their early successes, were sending covert support to the New Dawn in the form of advanced weapons and intelligence. Even the Tylorians, despite their public stance of neutrality, were rumored to be considering supporting the rebel cause. The New Dawn was no longer just a loose confederation of aggrieved species, it was becoming a galaxy-wide movement with the potential to topple the leadership of the unified coalition. Admiral Reeker knew that the summit could either be a turning point for peace or a disaster that would irrevocably fracture the galaxy. The pressure was immense, and the stakes had never been higher. She understood that if the negotiations failed, Earth would be forced to choose between crushing the rebellion with overwhelming force or risking the collapse of the coalition. Both paths, she knew, would come with dire consequences. The New Dawn's leaders arrived at the summit with the same hard-eyed resolve as their supporters. Their leader, a Zorith general named Vexith, stood at the front of the delegation, flanked by Varasian and Tylorian representatives. Vexith was a formidable figure, towering and insectoid, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with contempt as he surveyed the human diplomats. His reputation as a tactician was legendary, he was known for his cunning and ruthless strategy. He did not come to negotiate peace, he came to demand a reordering of the galactic power structure. The first few hours of the summit were tense. Each side took their places in the large, crystalline hall, where the flickering light of distant stars shone through the translucent walls. The air was thick with unspoken animosities, and every word seemed to carry the weight of history. Admiral Reeker, calm and poised, began the discussions with an impassioned speech about the future of the galaxy, one that was defined by cooperation, technological advancement, and mutual respect. But Vexith was not swayed. He rose to speak, his voice low and resonant, his words dripping with disdain for the human-led coalition. "You speak of unity," he said, his insectoid limbs moving with deliberate precision, "but what you have built is not unity, it is a hierarchy. A hierarchy in which Earth sits at the top, lording over us all. We, the Zorith, the Varaxians, the Tylorians, have suffered under your so-called leadership. You claim peace, but all you offer is the quiet oppression of those who do not share your vision." His words echoed through the hall, and the tension was palpable. Admiral Reeker stood in silence, her gaze unwavering. She had expected this. Vexitha's accusations were not new, they had been echoed by the New Dawn supporters for months. But Reeker knew that to engage in a war of words would only escalate the conflict. Instead, she took a deep breath and calmly replied, "What we offer is the opportunity to shape the future together. The galaxy does not belong to one species, it belongs to all of us. But if you are unwilling to seek compromise, if you are unwilling to trust in a shared future, then peace will remain a dream, and war will be inevitable." For a moment, the room was silent. Vexitha's expression hardened, and he narrowed his multifaceted eyes. The delegates of the other factions remained still, waiting for his response. Finally, Vexith spoke again, but this time his tone was different. "You underestimate us, human. We are not here to negotiate peace. We are here to end your reign." In that moment, it became clear that the New Dawn's movement had moved beyond the realm of diplomacy. The leaders of the rebellion were not interested in a shared future, they wanted nothing less than the dissolution of the coalition and the removal of humanity from the galactic stage. As the summit progressed, the New Dawn delegation presented their terms: the immediate dismantling of the human-led government, the redistribution of resources, and the cessation of human military expansion. Their message was unequivocal: humanity's influence must be reduced, and the old powers must be restored. The summit, intended to be a meeting of peace, had quickly devolved into an ultimatum. The New Dawn wanted nothing short of revolution, and it was clear that their demands would not be met. Admiral Reeker knew that negotiations had failed, but she also knew that there was no turning back now. War was no longer a distant possibility, it was an impending certainty. As the delegates prepared to leave the summit, a quiet alarm sounded throughout the hall. The Elysian Star, Earth's flagship, had detected an incoming fleet, too large to be ignored. The New Dawn had not just come to negotiate. They had come to strike. The first shots of the galactic civil war were about to be fired, and the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The seeds of rebellion had already taken root, and the storm that followed would change the course of history forever. The first salvo in the war that would shake the galaxy came without warning. As the delegates filed out of the summit hall, the shriek of warning alarms echoed through the halls of the station. The distant stars outside the window, once serene, now seemed cold and indifferent as humanity's fate hung in the balance. The New Dawn had not come to negotiate, they had come to annihilate. The Zorith, Varasyen, and Tylorian fleets, which had long been in hiding, now revealed themselves in full force. The once quiet moon in the nebula rift was suddenly alive with the fury of 100 warships, their weapons primed and ready. The Elysian Star and its human fleet were already mobilizing, but it was clear that Earth's forces were outnumbered. The New Dawn's forces had anticipated the summit as a trap, an opportunity to strike while humanity was off guard. Admiral Reeker, aboard the Elysian Star, gave the order to raise shields and prepare for battle. The once bright and hopeful future of the unified coalition had now crumbled into the chaos of galactic warfare. The galaxy was no longer a place of peace, it was a battleground, and Earth had to fight to preserve its place within it. The battle began with a ferocity that was unlike anything Reeker had ever seen. The Zorith, with their insectoid ships built for stealth, moved swiftly, striking from all directions. The Varasyen rebels, with their advanced weaponry, launched devastating bombardments on human defensive positions, while the Tylorians, cold and efficient, began coordinating an intense blockade to choke off the human fleet supply lines. The New Dawn was united in its singular goal, to break humanity's hold on the galaxy, no matter the cost. In the heat of the battle, Admiral Reeker's voice was calm and steady. She had fought in wars before, but never like this. The coalition had never been this divided, and the stakes were higher than ever. The Elysian Star shuddered under enemy fire, but Reeker's crew held steady, executing their maneuvers with precision. The human fleet was outmatched in sheer numbers, but Earth's technological innovations, particularly in quantum propulsion and AI-driven warfare, began to make their presence felt. On the ground, human soldiers fought valiantly in the defense of key strategic points across the moon. Each squadron, under the leadership of Captain Lyra Quintus, pushed back against wave after wave of attackers. Captain Quintus, known for her unyielding determination, led her forces with a fire that resonated across the ranks. Earth's soldiers knew that this fight wasn't just for survival, it was for the legacy of humanity itself. The space battle above the moon was chaotic, with explosions lighting up the dark void like distant stars. The Elysian Star was locked in a deadly dance with a massive Zorith warship, its weapons bristling with energy as it closed in on Earth's flagship. Reeker's crew fought with unmatched courage, outmaneuvering their enemies with the agility only a human crew could achieve. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that even Earth's finest ship could not hold off the full might of the New Dawn forever. Hours passed, and the situation grew increasingly dire. The tide of battle seemed to turn against the humans. The New Dawn strategy was working, the blockade was complete, and Earth's fleet was now trapped. Reeker's options were limited. Retreat was no longer an option, it was either victory or annihilation. In the midst of the chaos, Reeker received an unexpected transmission. It was from an old ally, an unexpected one. The Tylorian minister Enner, long thought to be a neutral player in the galactic struggle, had sent a message. The transmission was short but unmistakable: "I have the means to end this war. But you must trust me." Reeker was shocked. The Tylorians, after all, had been a pillar of the coalition's early success, but their loyalty had always been under scrutiny. Still, in this moment of desperation, she had little choice. She responded, "What do you propose?" Minister Enner's voice came through, cool and calculating. "There is a way to bypass the blockade. A hidden route through the rift. It is dangerous, but it is your only chance. You will need to trust me." Despite the risks, Reeker knew that Enner's knowledge of the rift, an area known for its chaotic gravitational fields and shifting wormholes, was invaluable. Earth's military had no such experience with navigating the rift, but Enner's fleet had made successful journeys through its labyrinthine passages before. With little time left, Reeker ordered her fleet to fall back and prepare for the risky maneuver. The Elysian Star, battered but not broken, led the charge, following Enner's encrypted coordinates through the rift. The Zorith and Varaxians were relentless in their pursuit, but the Tylorian fleet was waiting in the shadows, guarding the path ahead. As the human fleet plunged into the rift's swirling depths, the New Dawn's forces hesitated. They could not follow easily without risking total destruction, and the unknown nature of the rift made pursuit perilous. Reeker's gamble had worked. For the moment, humanity had gained a temporary reprieve. But as the Elysian Star emerged from the rift into the relative safety of deep space, Reeker knew that this was not the end. The war was far from over. The New Dawn was not going to back down, and humanity's place in the galaxy would always be in jeopardy as long as the forces of rebellion were left unchecked. The fires of rebellion had only just begun to burn, and Earth's legacy would be forged in the heat of this war. Would humanity prove its right to lead the galaxy, or would it crumble under the weight of its own ambition? The next battle would decide the future of the universe, and Admiral Alicia Reeker would not allow Earth to be the one to fall. The fight was just beginning, and the fate of the galaxy was now in the hands of those who dared to rise. In the wake of their harrowing escape through the rift, humanity's fleet was on the brink. The Elysian Star, though still functional, had suffered considerable damage. Its systems were battered, and the crew had been pushed to their limits in the chaos of battle. The remaining coalition forces, scattered and weakened by the New Dawn's relentless assault, needed time to regroup. But time was something they did not have. Admiral Reeker knew that the next phase of this war would require more than just holding off the rebellion. Earth and its allies had to find a way to strike back, to demonstrate that humanity's vision for the galaxy was not one of oppression, but of unity. But that vision was quickly slipping from their grasp as the forces of the New Dawn grew bolder and more organized. Vexith, their formidable leader, was not content to simply win small victories. He wanted to shatter the coalition's very foundation, and with every passing day, his resolve seemed to grow stronger. On the outer rim of coalition space, the coalition's military council convened for a desperate summit. Earth's leadership, fractured by the ongoing crisis, now faced its greatest challenge, the possibility that the rebellion would spread beyond the New Dawn. There were whispers among the factions, rumors that the Zorith, Verisian, and Tylorian insurgents were only the beginning. The galaxy was unraveling at an alarming rate, and without a decisive response, Earth's leadership might crumble entirely. "We cannot afford to wait any longer," Admiral Reeker declared, standing at the head of the table. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her resolve remained unshaken. "We have one chance to end this, and we need to take it." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. Earth's forces had been scattered, and the support of their allies was tenuous at best. Yet Reeker knew that if they could somehow launch a united strike against the heart of the New Dawn, they might have a chance to force the rebellion into submission. The target was clear: the New Dawn's headquarters, a massive fortress hidden within the uncharted depths of the Kyrios Nebula. This was where Vexitha's leadership was centered, where the rebellion's plans were being orchestrated. If humanity could strike at the heart of the New Dawn, it might fracture the movement and force the rebel factions to reconsider their assault on the coalition. The plan was risky. The Kyrios Nebula was one of the most treacherous regions of space, filled with powerful gravitational anomalies and volatile star formations. It was a perfect hiding place for the New Dawn's fleet, but it was also a deadly trap for any pursuing ship. Despite the odds, the leadership of the coalition agreed to the plan. The next few days were filled with preparation. Ships were repaired, supplies gathered, and intelligence was gathered on the enemy's movements. The final strike would require precise coordination, as it was not just about overcoming the New Dawn's fleet, it was about reaching the fortress itself and destroying it from within. As Earth's fleet entered the Kyrios Nebula, the vastness of space seemed to press in on them. The nebula was a dark and foreboding place, its swirling gases and stellar radiation creating an almost impenetrable fog. But the human fleet pressed on, its advanced sensors cutting through the thick veil of space. Every crew member knew that this would be a fight for their very survival. The battle that awaited them would be unlike any they had faced before. Vexith, aware of their approach, had fortified his position in the heart of the nebula. His fleet, though battered, was still a formidable force. They were ready to die for their cause, and they knew that this would be their moment to either shatter the coalition or secure their place as the new rulers of the galaxy. The first shots rang out as humanity's fleet breached the outer perimeter of the New Dawn's defenses. The battle was fierce, with the Elysian Star and its allied ships clashing against the combined forces of the Zorith, Varaxians, and Tylorians. The nebula's dangerous phenomena added an extra layer of chaos to the fight, as both sides struggled to maintain their position in the ever-shifting gravitational fields. Reeker commanded from the Elysian Star, guiding her forces with unwavering focus. The human fleet fought valiantly, using every trick they had learned in the previous battles. Their advanced technology, especially their ability to manipulate the quantum turbulence of the nebula, gave them a tactical edge, but the cost was steep. Ships were damaged, and casualties mounted as the New Dawn's relentless counterattacks grew more desperate. In the heart of the nebula, Vexith stood at the bridge of his flagship, watching the battle unfold with cold calculation. His forces were pushing back, but there was a fire in his eyes, a fire that refused to let him back down. The New Dawn had come too far, sacrificed too much to let the coalition reassert control over the galaxy. This was their last chance, and Vexith would not fail. On the ground, the human special forces made their move. Captain Lyra Quintus, leading a small but elite team, boarded one of the New Dawn's largest installations, a massive structure that was the nerve center of Vexitha's operation. Their mission was simple but perilous: infiltrate the heart of the fortress and plant a series of devastating charges to destroy it. As they infiltrated deeper into the structure, Captain Quintus's team encountered fierce resistance. But their resolve never wavered. Every soldier knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. After a long and brutal fight, they finally reached the core of the fortress. With seconds to spare, Quintus activated the charges, and the explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the nebula. The destruction of the New Dawn Central Command sent a ripple through their forces. With their leadership crippled, the rebellion faltered. The remaining New Dawn forces were scattered, and their unity began to break down. But Vexith was not easily deterred. Though his flagship was damaged and his forces in disarray, he refused to surrender. As the battle raged on, the last remnants of the New Dawn's fleet made one final stand. In a decisive moment, Reeker and her fleet delivered the final blow to Vexitha's flagship, sending it into the heart of the nebula, where it was consumed by the swirling chaos of the cosmic storm. With Vexitha's death, the rebellion's leadership was shattered, and the remaining forces of the New Dawn were scattered to the winds. The battle was over. The galaxy was not yet at peace, but humanity had secured its place within the galaxy. The fires of rebellion had been extinguished, and Earth's legacy, forged in the heat of battle, had endured. As Admiral Reeker surveyed the aftermath of the conflict, she knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. The war had cost them dearly, but humanity had proven that it would not be easily broken. The galaxy, once again, had a chance to rebuild, this time, under a leadership that sought unity, not dominance. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would shape it. And their legacy, forged in the fires of rebellion, would endure for generations to come. In the wake of the decisive victory over the New Dawn, the galaxy was left in a fragile state. The war had taken its toll, entire fleets were destroyed, countless lives lost, and entire worlds scarred by the ravages of rebellion. Yet amid the destruction, a new hope began to emerge, forged from the sacrifices of those who had fought to preserve humanity's vision for the future. Admiral Reeker stood before the assembly of coalition leaders, her face reflecting the weight of their recent struggles. The great hall of the coalition's headquarters, once filled with the vibrant energy of peace talks, now echoed with the solemnity of war's aftermath. The destruction of the New Dawn Central Command had crippled the rebellion's leadership, but the remnants of the insurgency still lingered in pockets of resistance. The galaxy, though momentarily united in victory, was not yet fully healed. Reeker addressed the assembly with the resolve that had carried her through the darkest hours of the war. "The battle is won, but the war for the future is far from over," she said, her voice steady, but carrying the weight of their shared burden. "Humanity did not emerge from this war to dominate the galaxy, we emerged to unite it. The legacy of Earth must not be one of destruction, but of rebuilding." The room fell silent. For the first time in a long while, the leaders of the galaxy's factions seemed to listen not with suspicion or fear, but with a glimmer of hope. The once bitter divide between Earth and the other species of the galaxy had been bridged, not by force, but by humanity's refusal to abandon their ideals of cooperation and unity. The Tylorians, once neutral but now allied with Earth, had brokered the first steps toward peace. Minister Enner, who had been instrumental in helping Reeker navigate the treacherous Kyrios Nebula, now stood beside her, his once cautious demeanor replaced by a newfound respect for humanity's resilience. The Tylorians, whose species had long prided themselves on their cold logic, had seen the strength in humanity's resolve. They had fought beside Earth's forces, and now they stood as equals in the rebuilding effort. But the true turning point came when the Varaxians, long wary of humanity's ambition, stepped forward. Their leader, Xantha Norik, a former member of the New Dawn, had been among the most vocal critics of Earth's methods during the conflict. Yet now, as the war's smoke cleared, her voice was one of reconciliation. She addressed the assembly with an air of quiet resolve. "We, too, must rebuild," she said. "Our people have been torn apart by war, but we now understand that peace can only be achieved by working together. humanity has proven that it can lead not with tyranny, but with vision. It is time for us to join that vision. Riker's heart swelled with cautious optimism. The hard lessons of the past had forged alliances where once there were only enemies. For all the cost of the war, humanity's ideals had begun to take root in the hearts of those who had once opposed them. But even as the foundations of peace began to form, Riker knew that the true work had only just begun. The scars of the war were deep, and mistrust lingered. The New Dawn's remnants still harbored resentment and anger, unwilling to accept the reality that their dream of a galaxy ruled by rebellion was over. In the coming months, Riker would be forced to address not only the remnants of the insurgency but also the broader challenges of rebuilding the galactic infrastructure that had been shattered. Earth's leadership would need to forge new alliances, rebuild trade routes, and ensure that the technologies they had developed for war would now be used for peace. The coalition would have to undergo a complete transformation, moving from a loose collection of species to a true intergalactic federation, where every voice would be heard and respected. But this could not be accomplished overnight. It would require time, patience, and the unyielding will to move forward. As Riker looked out over the vastness of the galaxy, she knew that Earth's place in it was no longer in question. The war had tested humanity's resolve, but it had also shown the galaxy that humans were not simply conquerors, they were the architects of a new future. A future where cooperation, rather than division, would shape the destiny of all species. In the coming years, the galaxy would slowly begin to heal. Earth would lead the charge in rebuilding, not through military might, but through the strength of its ideals. The human race had proven that it was capable of greatness, not because of its power, but because of its capacity to learn, to adapt, and to strive for a better future. And so, the legacy of Earth, one of unity, hope, and perseverance, was cemented in the stars. Humanity had shaped the future of the universe, not with weapons of war, but with the unyielding strength of their vision for peace. The galaxy, forever changed, would now embark on a new era, one where the lessons of the past would guide the generations yet to come. As Admiral Riker stood at the helm of the Elysian Star, looking out into the stars that now seemed a little brighter, a little more full of possibility, she knew that the true victory had just begun. The future of the galaxy was no longer uncertain, it was in humanity's hands, and together, they would shape a future that no one could have ever imagined. The legacy of Earth, the last hope for the galaxy, had become the hope for all.